I'm Kortney Wilson, and this is the Shit Stick of Life podcast. My guest today is an artist manager to none other than Reba McEntire and Kristin Chenoweth, with his recently launched artist management company, JTMC Entertainment. He's also the former VP of Marketing and Creative at Starstruck Entertainment, where he worked closely with the likes of Kelly Clarkson and Blake Shelton, and Big Machine label group's roster as well. Please welcome my dear friend, Justin McIntosh. Thank you so much for being with me.
Thanks for having me.
Justin, it's funny because when we were talking about having guests, I really had to dig into my friend group because we have a lot of mutual friends and they're all super cool human beings.
They are.
But you kept coming to the top of the list, buddy.
Well, thanks. Hopefully this, my conversation warrants me at the top of that.
Well, have you been hit by the shit stick of life?
Who hasn't?
That's exactly it.
Really?
Exactly it. Okay, so I want to first try and remember how we met. I do believe it was through Carolyn Snell, who is our dear friend. You were working with Carolyn. Were you working with Carolyn?
Yeah, Carolyn and I were working together. She was tour managing Reba.
That's right.
And I worked at Starstruck. We managed Reba. And it started because I was going to sell my house.
That's right. Okay.
And I bought a condo in 12 South. I was looking to sell it. And Carolyn goes, "Oh, you got to talk to Kortney." She's like, "You'll love Kortney. Like, you guys are..."
You got to love dear friends, because I do believe I was a brand new agent at the time. So she was supporting me. And then we bonded over, real estate.
Yeah, we started looking at condos.
Yeah.
And sold one, bought one.
Yeah. And I remember when I went to your house, I was like, oh my God, this guy's got style.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. Well,
I try.
But the reason I had to think about it is because I also had a history with Reba. Look, so when I first moved to Nashville, Reba and her then husband and Starstruck offered me my first production deal. So it's funny that our paths did not cross over that, but rather over real estate.
Reba is the Kevin Bacon of Nashville. I mean, it's everybody has a connection to Reba, and Reba has a direct connection to Kevin Bacon. So it's
she does?
Yeah, Trimmers. They did Trimmers together. So you are now how many degrees away from Kevin Bacon?
My goodness, I love this. I'm practically related.
Exactly.
Yes. So in kind of preparing for this, which I didn't do a whole lot of because you're my dear friend and I really wanted this to be a conversation, I realized that I have a lot of missing pieces. Like I have little stories about your life that I've heard through other people. I was obviously at your wedding to your husband, Nate. And I know a lot of things about your life, but I don't know a lot about your early beginnings. So before we get into how freaking awesome you are and how far you've come and all the things that you're doing, tell me a little bit about your upbringing.
So I grew up on a farm in the middle of nowhere, West Tennessee, third generation family farm. My parents, dad's a farmer. They owned a farm supply store. Sold anything you could purchase that you would need for a farm. So fertilizer, seed, chemicals, boots, parts, whatever. I mean, it's like a tractor supply, essentially, but independent.
That's just like the man I know.
Yeah, exactly. That's who I am, of course. So I grew up, working in the store and being around farming life, but I love music. And my parents were, I took voice lessons and they realized early on I was not a sports kid. I tried to play basketball, was terrible at it. Nobody wanted me to play basketball, but I loved music. And so my parents encouraged that. And
you have siblings?
I have siblings. I'm the oldest of three.
Okay.
But they really let me lean into what I loved, and that was music. And we would come to Nashville. We would go to the Grand Ole Opry. Like I just loved country music and I wanted to be around it. And fast forward to, being a teenager, when I started looking at colleges, Belmont was at the top of the list because they had a music business program. Most kids' parents from rural West Tennessee, if they had said, look, I want to go work in the music business and try to make, a life out of this, probably would have said, yeah, maybe just stay here. But what they didn't. They were very supportive and encouraged me to follow that dream. And so I moved to Nashville.
Pause for a second because I know a lot more of your story. So that is a little bit surprising to me. In the same way that it has been in my story, because I had the support of my parents to come here, which I don't have the support of them now in a lot of ways. So, same. So were you associated at all with Reba McEntire as a teenager?
I
Because I've heard stories.
loved and adored Reba.
Okay.
I mean, Reba is really the reason that I fell in love with music.
That's
so
what I heard.
my parents took me in 1995 to the Pyramid in Memphis, Tennessee, which is now a Bass Pro Shop. Terrible change from a venue to a Bass Pro Shop. But they took me to see Reba, and I was just enamored with the costumes and the drama, and she was theatrical, and it was unlike anything I'd ever seen before, and it made me fall in love with, oh wow, like this is a side of country music that I didn't know. And so I fell in love with it. It's like Garth Brooks, Reba, Vince Gill, Trisha Yearwood, like those were the artists. So it ignited a passion in me for music. And it also, at the same time, like mid 90s, the internet was becoming a thing, like, artist websites. Reba was the first country artist to have a massive website. And I was like, wow, like what is the internet? Like, I was a kid of the 90s, like everybody else figuring this out. And I was like, I'm going to learn how to make websites because I was so like, this is really cool. It's new. And so I taught myself how to code. I'm a nerd in that way.
Crazy.
And taught myself graphic design, taught myself Photoshop. I created like a little Reba fan site because I was like, I love music and this is a way for me to learn how to do this.
I also heard that your fan club, which was unofficial, became bigger than Reba's official fan club.
And I was taking, like, I had a video card and I was encoding videos from CMT and putting them on the internet before YouTube was a thing. I didn't know copyright law and that you can't do that.
Right.
And so I got slapped with a cease and desist as a 10-year-old kid in rural West Tennessee.
The punchline is that he is managing Reba McEntire today.
Yeah.
But his humble beginnings started with a cease and desist.
Yeah. And I'd never set out to be where I am today. I just wanted to work in music. I didn't try to work for Reba. There was something that was set into motion that was bigger than me and led me to this.
I don't know if you know this about me, but after I left my record deal, I joined Music City Networks, which was a company that ran fan clubs.
Yep.
And I was the person running the fan clubs for everybody from Brad Paisley, Toby Keith, Lady Annabelle, you name it. And so people like you running those unofficial...
With the bane of your
existence. The bane of my existence. And so though I wasn't slapping them with a cease and desist letter, I was reporting them and being like, oh my gosh, they're doing this.
Yeah.
So really funny. Between being a 10-year-old boy running a fan club and Belmont, did you have any positive connections or affiliations with that camp, Reba?
No. I mean, none. Like, I mean, it was... I took the website down, never spoke of it again, like moved on, became a normal teenager doing teenage things and just kept moving on with life and never thought about it ever again, honestly.
So now you're in Nashville, which is a dream.
Yeah, 2002, moved to Nashville.
Coming from where you did farmland out in the country, was it a huge adjustment?
Yeah, because I had access to everything. I was used to being 35 minutes away from a Walmart. And so now I'm down the street and I can go see a concert with a 10-minute drive and there's music everywhere. And all the things that I have loved my whole life are now like within tangible reach.
Which I get because like, even though I didn't grow up secluded from anything, I was, maybe 30 minutes from the city at any given point in my life. I remember when I moved to Nashville, I felt like it was the whole world opened up for me.
Yes.
I was exposed to everything.
Yeah.
And I couldn't get enough of it.
Yeah, same.
Like I wanted to know about all different types of people and all different types of denominations. And I loved that I had, an unemployed hairdresser and an astrophysicist beside me and that everybody got along. And it felt a little like I didn't have the classes that I grew up with.
Yeah.
The traditional like, oh, he's a doctor, he's a lawyer, that's an artist. It was like we were all in it together.
That was the thing that was so eye-opening to me. It was like, wow, like the world is bigger than I have been exposed to. Like as a kid, we didn't travel. Our vacation was we went to Arkansas.
I at least got to Disney World.
Yeah, we went to Disney World when I was a little kid, but my view of the world was very limited. I hadn't been exposed to other ways of thinking and believing and learning to learn from other people. Like I'd never been exposed to that. There was one way.
Had you ever been in love before you moved to Nashville?
That's a complicated question.
Okay.
Yes, I think I had. Like, I had a girlfriend in high school who we are still very close friends. She was at my wedding. I also didn't think I understood that young what being gay meant because I didn't have examples, and I didn't like that's a whole process in and of itself.
Okay. Which happened while you were in college.
Really after college.
Get out.
Like college, I didn't really address it during college because I was so focused on
music,
working and building a career and trying to figure out my way into this business that was always my excuse of like, well, that's why I'm not dating. I'm busy. I'm working. I'm trying to do all these things. And I didn't really address it.
Okay. So now you're in college at Belmont. Take me through that period of time and how you ended up working in the music industry.
Yeah. So, I mean, I loved Nashville. I wanted to take advantage of everything. I interned like anywhere I could volunteer. Like I just wanted to learn as much as I could. I didn't know really what part of the business I wanted to be in. So for me, it was about taking everything in and figuring out, okay, where is there a hole that I can like fill in?
Wow.
And how does that get me in the door?
Where do you think that came from?
I think just how I'm wired.
Yeah.
I like to problem solve. I like to be a solution to things.
And you've always been that way.
And I've always been that way.
Okay, so you still have your parents' support through this time. You graduate Belmont. Now what?
So I graduated I actually ended up graduating. My last semester, I doubled up and took double the hours because I had a job offer on the table. Country Radio Broadcasters, which is here in Nashville. They run Country Radio Seminar. It's been around for years. It's kind of the most important, event that a new artist could play. I got offered the job as the creative director for the company. And so, but the kind of the stipulation was CRS always happens in February.
So CRS is Country Radio Seminar, and it's where a ton, basically all of the radio execs
from across the United States.
Yeah, and then some, sometimes from Canada. They come in and they get access to all of the artists that are huge that they otherwise would not have access to. And you would go from hotel room to hotel room and do radio interviews. So the things that you listening to on the radio, hearing an artist like Dierks Bentley or Reba McEntire saying, you're listening to this and this is my favorite radio station. It's a grueling few days for everyone.
There are showcases for new artists.
That's right.
All the labels are doing events to try to, convince these programmers to get behind these new artists.
That's right. So when I was a new artist, I participated in CRS right before my record came out. I did something like 250 interviews to promote a song that had just come out, and it was what was called Most Added that week, which is a big deal. And it ends kind of on Saturday night, I think, with a big party.
Always a disco party.
Always a disco party. And on Sunday, my label called me in because I was going to leave on Sunday morning to fly to a station in Cincinnati to pump gas. I know Justin knows exactly what I'm talking about because as a new artist, you do crazy things to get ads, And so they would work you like a dog.
Yep.
And I was going to pump gas for a local radio station where people could meet me as I was pumping their gas. It was bizarre. And before I was going to do that, and I was already exhausted, they pulled me into the label that morning before I got on the plane. And they said, we're pulling your record. The record that I just did 250 interviews for over 4 or 5 days, 3 days. And they said yes. And they were like, we're signing another artist because radio has decided that they don't want us to release another female.
Yep.
And we're signing an artist called Rascal Flatts. And then I cried all the way to Cincinnati and I pumped the damn gas. So anyway, you guys now know what CRS is.
CRS. The beautiful part about that job was we had a killer board of directors and an agenda committee that were record label heads, managers, attorneys, radio group, heads of programming divisions. And I had access to all of them because I would, work very closely with them preparing for the events. And it let me get to know people and learn from them. And I had people that I could pick up the phone and call and say, tell me about this. So it wasn't where I thought I would end up, but it was a great start. So I'm at CRS, maybe been there, I don't know, 2 or 3 years. I graduated in 2005. This was 2007. I get a call from a friend that I'd gone to college with that said, there's this kind of new record label. They're an indie label. They need somebody to kind of run digital marketing. I think you'd be great for it. I'm going to connect you with Scott Borchetta. So he left MCA to start this record label.
Now, flash forward, Scott Borchetta was the man who signed Taylor Swift.
Yeah. Okay. So I go to lunch with Scott and we went to I think we went to Stony River on West End. I think is where we went. We had lunch. And he's telling me about Big Machine and what they're doing. And, you know, that Taylor Swift, nobody really knew who Taylor was at that time. She was new. Like the Tim McGraw song, I think maybe had just come out.
Yeah.
And I got offered the job to be, I think my title was Manager of Web Services and Marketing. I think that was the title. Who knows what the hell that means? Like, you know, it's like, and
Carving out your own position.
Everything was new at the time. You know, Facebook was new, MySpace was new, Twitter was starting. Like, it was the Wild West.
Yeah.
So he offered me the job. We had some negotiation back and forth about it, and I ended up taking the job. And the first day on the job, I walked in, and my office was basically in a closet in an old house on Music Row. Nobody could really tell me what I was supposed to do. Like, it was just kind of like, here's a computer, figure it out.
Knowing you now, that's your element, is to problem solve.
Yeah.
So you were really thrown to the wolves, probably to do something that nobody really knew what it was at the time. What is social media? What is MySpace? How do we utilize this? Never thinking, by the way, back then, nobody ever thought that that would become the be and end all of entertainment.
No, not at all.
Yeah. So
nobody, live streams weren't a thing. Like, you weren't chatting. You weren't like.
In fact, it was very hard to get artists to even participate in anything pertaining to social media, fan clubs, exclusivity in any capacity.
Yes. So it was fun. We're learning, we're doing new things. And then obviously, what happened with Taylor. Taylor explodes.
Yeah.
Everything changes. The label starts growing. We're signing more artists. We decided to start a kind of basically an imprint of Big Machine called the Valerie Music Company. The reason being that, radio promotion people can only work so many songs, but we had shared services for the label group. So marketing, creative, digital, publicity, that was shared among the two labels. We ended up signing Reba.
Is your 10-year-old self just dying?
Oh, I'm like, oh my gosh, like, this is amazing. Like, the artist that made me fall in love with this, like, I actually get to work with now. Scott had a relationship with Reba. They had been at MCA together for years. His wife, Sandy, had designed clothing for Reba for years, the infamous red dress. So Reba comes to the Valerie Music Company, which was a huge deal at the time. I mean, she's leaving her catalog of 30 plus years behind at MCA and going to an independent label. That's a big deal. Like, now, I don't know if anybody that happens all the time. But at the time, that was really a huge thing. So I started working Reba. And one of the very first things that I pushed with her and the management team at the time was she doesn't have an option not to be engaged digitally and socially.
Because she's been around at this point. She's a staple in country music. Yeah. And so for her to evolve with the likes of people like Taylor Swift, she has to stay relevant.
Yeah. And that's Reba. She is so open, and so, she wants to learn and know and do. And that's what I love about her. Like, nothing's ever a challenge that she's not willing to go after. In fact, that excites her for when there's a challenge. So I remember sitting in a room, was told, look, she'll never do this. And I was like, just give me an hour. Give me an hour with her. And I did a whole presentation about, how she could get into it, what would be the easiest way. I think I still have the PDF somewhere of the presentation. So we did. And I taught Reba how to Twitter. And she loved it. And she got on Twitter and she exploded on Twitter. And we got her on Facebook. We got her on MySpace. Like, we got her engaged and built her numbers. I mean, and now I'm pretty sure she has the largest following of any female in country music on TikTok now. Goodness. Like, she has more than Dolly. She has more than Carrie.
So at what point do you end up leaving the label? And
so at about the 3-year point, I realized that the label world wasn't really for me. I like focusing on the long-term development of an artist. And it's hard when you get connected to an artist and then the single doesn't hit and you have to move on. I hated that. I didn't love it. I also wanted a work-life balance, and I didn't have one. I knew that it wasn't sustainable, and I knew that I wanted more. And I was like, I've got to figure out what that looks like. And so I started taking some interviews, and there was a position open at iTunes at the time when iTunes was still like, the biggest thing in music. They ended up going a different route, which was the right thing. They hired internally, which was fine. But I made it to like the last 2, and I thought, okay, I'm going to end up at Apple. Like, this is what I'm going to do. Didn't get the job. And about that time, I got a call from Starstruck, which was Reba. And the call was basically like, we need a you. Can you help us find somebody? Like at the time, management companies were starting to bring in digital and marketing in-house.
It's worth noting that Starstruck managed several artists at that point, including, I think, Blake Shelton,
Kelly Clarkson,
Clarkson,
new artist, and Caroline Cole. I just was like, well, what if you could have me? Like, I'm gonna leave the label. Like, this is not for me. And so we started those conversations. A lot of backstory to that, more than needs to be told here. But I ended up taking a job at Starstruck. I left the record label in 2010 and went to Starstruck.
I was at your wedding. So you met Nathan when?
2014.
And you met him where?
It's the gayest story ever.
Okay.
We were cast in a musical theater production, Dolly Parton's 9 to 5.
Oh my gosh, I saw you guys in that.
Yeah, that's how we met.
You were so good. Okay, that's how you met. Nathan is he a physician or a
He's a pediatric physical therapist is what his doctorate is in. Yep.
Now, many years before that, you knew you were gay.
Oh, I mean, I think I knew when I was a teenager, but I didn't know what that meant.
Okay, fair enough.
Probably even before that, but I didn't have the words, and I go back to, like, at that time, there was no example of what, like, there were stereotypes of gay, but I didn't see myself as a gay man in anything that I was shown in media or TV. Like, it just wasn't there.
Right.
So the only thing that I knew of gay was that it was bad. It was sinful. It was bad. And, these people are terrible and you're going to hell. Like, that was it. That was my one frame of reference for gay.
When did that shift?
Not until my late 20s.
Get out. Were you dating men before then?
No. I honestly thought forever that I would just be single.
Because that was easier.
Because that was easier. Yes.
So I want to tell a little story because I can't remember how the conversation happened, but I was telling you a story about Lennox, my daughter. I don't even know if you remember this, but I said we were laying in bed one day on a Sunday morning watching a movie, and there was a commercial with a grandmother holding her baby. And I said to her, "Oh my goodness, are you going to make me a grandmother one day?" And she said, "Maybe." And I went, "What do you mean maybe?" Like as a joke. And she said, "Well, if I marry a boy, but maybe if I marry a girl, I don't know." And I said, "If you marry a girl, you can still make me a grandmother." And you said, "That just warms my heart." And I said, "What do you mean?" He goes, "That your response was that she could still make you a grandmother if she married a girl, that you didn't shame her for wanting to marry a girl."
Yeah.
I will always remember that conversation because it didn't occur to me to shame her.
Right.
And then flash forward, I'm at your wedding. And I did know a little bit about your story because we'd had several conversations about the lack of support that you were shown by your family after coming out. But I had to hold my shit together as Reba McEntire walked you down the aisle.
Yeah.
How did that come to be?
When Nathan and I met, I dated other guys before, but when we met, I knew that it was different pretty quickly. Like I was like, this is my person. And if I am not fully authentic and transparent with every person in my life, we will not have the chance to develop in the way that is healthy and good.
That's a big juxtaposition from coming from a really religious family and upbringing to get to that point. That took therapy, I would imagine. Yeah. Okay.
So I made the decision to come out to my family in 2014, and it did not go well.
Were you all together when you did that in person?
No, I emailed my mom first because I've always been close to my mom, and that felt like the right thing to do. And I knew that I needed to give her the time and space to process and not put her on the spot with it. Like some might say that was a cowardly way to do it, but it was the way that I knew that I needed to do it to give her the space to process. And I told her that I was like, I don't expect a response. Take all the time you need with this. But I need to tell you this. So it didn't go well. It specifically did not go well with my dad, and my dad and I to this day don't really have a relationship. We haven't spoken since 2014. We were at a dinner one night because Reba met Nathan. Nathan was the first guy that I'd ever introduced Reba to. And she met him and loved him. And we were at a dinner in Los Angeles one night, and somehow the topic came up about, were we gonna get married? And I hadn't proposed to him yet at the time, and I was like, yeah, I think we probably will. And she
Don't ruin our proposal, Reba.
Yeah, she asked me the question. She was like, what is your family? How are they handling, and what do you think they'll do? And I was like, they won't be a part of it. And she looked at me and she said, you know what? I will. I'll walk you down the aisle. I will never forget that, because it was this. She didn't have to do that, and that speaks to our relationship. The relationship that we have with each other. Like, it's unique.
When I talk about being in country music and in Nashville, it's an interesting place because we share a lot of friends who are in country music, artists, big time artists, who are very LGBTQ plus friendly, but don't take a step out to support the community always.
Yeah.
Would that be a fair assessment?
Of course. I mean, it's just part of the business. I mean, it's what it's been. It's changing. It's getting a lot better. We've made huge leaps, but it's also, that's part of a reflection on the country too. The country's changed. Like, as people see more examples, people feel more comfortable. I mean, that's why I feel a responsibility to be who I am and be visible with who I am, because I hope some other kid that's like me sees it and goes, oh, like, I see myself in that. I don't have to just look at what I see on TV. Like, if you look at history, we have made a massive amount of progress in a very short amount of time. If you really look at how far we've come since, let's just say the 50s.
Yes.
It's not that long ago.
No.
We've made a lot of progress in a really short amount of time. And I think that's the pushback that we're seeing right now, is that it's happened very quickly relative to history.
Ryan and I went to see the show And Juliet last night. It's really good. But have you seen it?
No.
You're the reason I go to so much musical theater, because you recommend it. You'll be like, I was just in New York. You must see this, 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 this. And so we always follow suit. So I'm very proud of myself for seeing something before you. But it's a super progressive piece built on pop culture, lots of pop culture references. But it was me and then Ryan to my right. And then there were 4 ladies to his right who proceeded to pretend, like, make the motion of throwing up when 2 men kissed on the stage. They hollered and pretended to throw up and give the motion that they were, disgusted. And of course, I was like, let me at them. So Ryan, thankfully, was between us. So I had to make a decision in this moment whether I was going to cause a scene and literally get thrown out of the place. So I made the decision not to, and to get through the piece. Well, we got in the car and I said to Ryan, thank you for not telling me not to do, like, not making the decision, saying, don't make a scene. And he goes, I almost made a scene. I said, what? He goes, it was disgusting.
Yeah.
He goes, I was humiliated for them. So from my perspective, it has felt recently like it's gotten a little bit worse.
That feels hopeless to me. And I want to believe that we're just in a weird space right now. I can't change what the presidency's going to do. I can't physically walk in there and change that. What I can do is I can control how I relate to my neighbor, how I relate to my community, what I do locally. I can control all those things. And I hope that if I do those things, that will have a ripple effect.
Well, you have an audience right now, and there are lots of parents out there right now holding their little babies. And some of them are going to come out to their parents at some point.
Yeah.
Is there something that you would say to those parents who might share a more traditional belief system because of the way that they were raised? You really were hit by the shit stick of life in this, that you don't have your family by your side.
Yeah.
And I'm going to get to some of these amazing moments coming up for you because you're soon to be a dad. But you are a successful human being on all fronts. Obviously, professionally, we've covered it. Not even the gamut guys. He's got a new management company. He's killing it. But you are a survivor of all of this.
Yeah.
So what would you say to those parents out there?
I think those parents need to realize that it's not about them. There's fear of the unknown. And I know that's where it comes from for my parents, because they don't understand it and they've never been exposed to it. And they're processing it with the limited amount of knowledge that they have.
So when you consider unconditional love, how do you justify? Because your parents loved you.
And I think my parents still do love me.
Yes.
But they don't understand. We're in that place now of like, how do you overcome that? And we haven't. And we may not. And I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
I had a therapist early on tell me that I had to grieve the loss of my family as if it was a death.
Oh my goodness. My therapist said verbatim those words.
Because it's not going to go back the way that it was. And so you have to grieve that and you have to move forward and figure out how to exist with that loss.
I've said this before on this podcast already, but it was profoundly impactful to me when she said, hope is the last thing you hang on to so you don't have to take a step forward.
Yeah.
But when you let go of that hope or you grieve the loss, it doesn't mean that they can't come back.
No.
You and Nate are going to be dads.
We are going to be dads.
Are you guys excited?
We're so excited. It's been such a journey, and we're so happy that it feels like a reality. We got to see last week, we got to FaceTime for an ultrasound, and we saw his arms for the first time. His arms and his hands. And it was the coolest thing because we were looking at it like if we were standing above him looking at the top of his head, and you could see his arms come up and you saw his hands, and he did this like he's thinking, and we were like, oh my gosh, like those are arms and hands. Like he's not just this like amorphous blob anymore. Like there is an actual like baby in there.
What kind of dads will you and Nathan be?
I think he's a lot calmer than I am about it right now because he has pediatric training and he loves babies and that's like his specialty. I'm a little nervous. I was like, you take the baby years and I'll take the teenage years. Like we got.
Oh, you should have talked to me before you made that agreement.
I think we're going to be parents. I hope we're going to be parents that let our child flourish exactly as they are and not put expectations on them of what they have to be or what we expect them to be, but like let him be who he is.
So what's next for you?
Obviously being a dad. I'm really excited about the next phase, both personally and professionally.
You just signed one of my favorite artists.
I just signed Kristin Chenoweth, and I love Kristin. I'm so excited about everything going on with her.
What a spitfire she is. She is like cool in person.
She's the coolest. Like
okay.
Somebody
you tell her that we'll be friends
yes,
one day. Okay.
Yes. Good. Somebody texted me and they were like, "You really are like making a niche for yourself in like this like strong female like kind of diva lane." And I'm like, I am. I purposely went after that because I understand it. I think I would be terrible with a male artist. You know, like a traditional male country artist, I would be terrible. I just don't think I would be good at that. I think I understand female acts and I enjoy it. It's fun. It's different. There's a different level of creativity and
there's better fashion.
Absolutely.
I mean, there's that.
There's also the thing that I love about Reba and Kristin both is that we don't exist in just one lane. You know, we're doing music, we're doing TV, we're doing film, we're doing Broadway, we're doing books. Like it's never boring because we're in so many different lanes and it's fun and you get to learn something new every day. I feel like I'm learning something new. I've been in this business 20 years and I still feel like I'm learning.
So living in such an ecosystem with such big stars, how do you stay grounded?
I have great friends, setting with one right now. Friends that, you know, help me remember what life is about. And my husband, I mean, Nathan he is my biggest cheerleader and also my biggest like, hey, it's 7:30, shut the laptop. Like we need to go for a walk or we need to watch a movie or we need to go like, this is great. And I know you're amazing what you're doing, but like, that's not the most important thing. And I think Nathan helps remind me of that always. And I think I learned that. I mean, at Big Machine, I wanted work-life balance. Like that was so important for me.
So when you think of like shit stick of life stories, because I believe everybody gets hit by the shit stick.
Yeah.
I think it's impossible. I think that's where all the lessons are.
Yeah.
What's one that taught you some of the best lessons?
I mean, losing my family, honestly, because my identity was so attached to my family and who my family was. And I always felt like if I lost that, I would lose myself. And it was the exact opposite. Like I found myself and it's terrible. I miss my family terribly. I miss my mom.
I wrote a letter to your mom and didn't end up sending it, but I wrote her a letter.
Yeah. Like I wish that she was, you know, excited about the fact that I'm having a child and was there and would be at the hospital.
Does she know?
She does. She knows. You know, that's hard. Like it's hard sitting with that. Like I don't care how old any of us get. You always want the approval of your parents, but it's also grown me. And I think it's helped prepare me for being a parent and wanting to have healthy boundaries for my kid And I'm sure I will totally screw something else up, other than this. No parent is perfect, and I know I'm not going to be a perfect parent. Like,
That's impossible.
it's made me really focus on, I want to be that parent that sees my child for who they are and loves them unconditionally.
So when we listen back to this in years to come, before this little boy is born, what life lesson would you like for him to carry?
I want him to have faith in something bigger than himself and see the world as bigger.
Yeah.
Like, that's my hope for him, is that he feels protected and loved and supported. And whatever the belief is, I just want him to believe that there's something bigger at work.
Justin, I adore you. I love you so much. And I'm so glad that you pursued your dreams despite all of the obstacles and the loss of your family. It was a risk to follow your heart and be who you were meant to be.
Yeah.
I know that your family loves you, despite them letting some words in a book maybe stand in the way of being able to tell you that. Thank you so much for being on this podcast. And I will be the unofficial nanny. Call me anytime.
Can't wait. Love you.
Love you. Find a ton more about my dear friend Justin McIntosh in the show notes or visit shitstickoflife.com.